and to show that the surpassing power comes from God and not the human occupant of the chair of Peter. The people don't realize this. The First Vatican Council was very clear that the successor of Peter has the charism of truth and never failing faith, right? And then Vatican I also affirms that the Apostolic See has been held free, has been immaculate and free from error. Now, that does not mean that a pope cannot make an erroneous prudential judgment,
Right.
or sin. Certainly, popes can sin. Popes can be negligent, as some say Pope Honorius was, but he didn't quite realize the magnitude of his negligence at that time, and he was not a heretic, because the matter had not been defined. So people going around saying Honorius the First was a heretic, John the 22nd was a heretic, they haven't studied the matter carefully. That's all I could say, and you know this very well. And St. Robert Bellarmine brings it out so well. So
yeah, it does seem to be quite a controversial topic, and I think that usually the people like here bring up Pope Honorius either don't understand the arguments they're putting forth or misrepresent what has been said. And I think that you put forth really the best position on that. I mean, much more can be said, but you brought up a really good point there. I don't think people realize that in terms of what Vatican I has to say, it is not saying that we've never had a pope who has erred or who has sinned or anything of the sort, is it? It's rather the parameters of what it's defining are they're very particular. And we know we've had popes that have sinned. We've had popes that, look at Peter. Peter denied our Lord. Peter was rebuked. You can have popes that have been rebuked in the past before, but I think people tend to misunderstand what Vatican I put forth. Have you noticed that as well?
I have. And if you look carefully at the relatio of Bishop Gasser, he some of them say, oh, you're going to dogmatize an extreme position of this Albert Pigius. But then Gasser says, no, it's not any it's not an extreme position of Pigius or any other one. Where it's actually the position of St. Robert Bellarmine. And then he says in book 4, chapter 6 of De Sumo Pontifice, also called De Romano Pontifice, he says that this position is pious and probable. And then if you look at what Bellarmine says, he tries to prove it, that a pope, there's never been a heretical pope, and that's a sign that there can never be one. Now, and so sometimes there's a confusion between indefectibility and infallibility in the strict sense. Indefectibility means that in spite of, prudential mistakes, maybe negligence on the part of some popes, that the Apostolic See will be protected from misleading all of the faithful, on a matter of doctrine. And that if there's occasional mistakes or some things could have been put better or something like that, it's not of such a magnitude as to be a grave error. So we would have to understand it in that sense. But some people say, well, then you're saying that everything the Pope says is infallible. No, we understand the difference, but people don't understand. Indefectibility means that the Pope will never defect or undermine the faith. He will not be guilty of apostasy, heresy, or grave error. There's a special protection. It's called a charism of truth and never failing faith. So I just get frustrated sometimes, but I have to pray for people and try to be charitable. I think there's great misunderstanding about this, but it's Christ, it's His promise, and also ecumenical councils. Can they err? That's another question, because we have some people saying, well, I heard a bishop, I won't mention his name, but I heard him publicly say, well, there has to be a meeting and correct the errors of Vatican II. Well, this is very problematical, because you go to great theologians like St. Robert Bellarmine, or to mention Ludwig Ott. I mean, Bellarmine says that a general council represents the universal church and hence has the consensus of the universal church. Wherefore, if the church cannot err, neither can a legitimate and approved ecumenical council err.
Yeah.
Now, not everything taught at every ecumenical council has that level of dogmatic infallibility. Some things were at a stage of development, and it doesn't preclude further development. For example, at the Council of Trent, there were some who wanted the council to define the dogma of the Immaculate Conception. It chose it wasn't the time. At the Vatican I, there were many bishops who wanted a definition of the Assumption of Mary. It wasn't the time. These would come later. So it's in God's timing. But the idea that there could be positive doctrinal error in an ecumenical council is very problematical. Some things in a council could need explanation. They could be better developed, clarified in the future, but that's different than a positive error.
That's a great point there, Dr. Fastiggi. Let me ask you that a little bit of clarification, which you've been totally clear on, but let me just ask you: are all of the canons in every ecumenical council, do they fall under the category of being dogmatic in the sense that as a Catholic, you've got to follow every single one? And I know this is the reason I'm asking you this is because after I presented the very case that you did right now, very similar wording, I had a lady in the audience will pop up her smartphone and look up one of the ecumenical councils. And she said, well, look, I'm reading this and I seem to see certain prohibitions against hunting or what kind or this or that. And I think maybe people tend to not realize, okay, well, are all of the canons dogmatic, or how do we know what is dogmatic at an ecumenical council? Is there any way to know?
Well, that's an excellent question, William. There are disciplinary canons, and they're time bound, and they could change. I mean, I think she's referring to the Fourth Lateran Council. It has all these types of disciplinary canons forbidding.
I didn't know where she got it from.
No, forbidding clerics from hunting, and
Okay.
requiring Jews and Muslims to wear distinctive garb. I mean, a lot of these are time bound, just like canon law can change.
Yeah.
So can disciplinary canons change. It's a matter of faith and morals. That's infallibility or protection from error only applies to faith and morals, not even historical matters. You know, we were talking about Honorius the First. You know, that's the that you have the Third Council of Constantinople anathematizing him, and then this is repeated at Nicaea II and also Constantinople IV. Then some people say, well, you see, the Pope can be anathematized by an ecumenical council, but of course, when Pope Leo II confirmed what the council taught, he modified it a little bit and basically said Honorius the First was negligent. But my point on this is that a matter of faith and morals? It's a matter of history and interpretation of texts of what Honorius meant when he said, let us confess the one will of our Lord. And Pope John IV had defended him, as well as also St.
Was that a private letter as well, though?
Yes, it was a private letter, but it was written to a patriarch, so it has some merit.
Okay.
But we don't have the full text. But what I would point out, though, is this: that what was infallibly condemned at Constantinople III was the heresy of one will, monothelitism. Whether or not Honorius actually believed that or taught the error, or could it be, it had not been clarified, is a matter of historical debate. So ecumenical councils are not infallible on matters of history. What's very interesting, William, is by the time you get to the Council of Trent, they don't condemn people by name, as these earlier councils.
Right.
They condemn propositions. If anyone says, or literally, if anyone will have said ... anathema sit. And clearly they were thinking of Luther and Calvin and others but they decided not to condemn by name. They were concerned with defending the faith. And I think that that's maybe the wisest thing, because sometimes people say things and then later on, what did they mean by what they said in terms of the language and so on. But in any case, it has to be a matter of faith and morals. It's very interesting that Honorius dies in 638. 649, the Lateran Synod held under Pope St. Martin I condemns very strongly monothelitism and anathematizes certain people who held it. They don't mention Honorius. So 11 years after his death, he was not recognized as a promoter of the heresy. So
that is very interesting. So let me be clear, because I have time and time again, I've seen Catholics get caught up on the issue of Pope Honorius. Let me be clear, make sure that I am understanding you correctly. It's possible those councils erred on this matter, which would have been a historical issue, not an issue dealing with faith and morals. Is that a permissible position for a Catholic to take?
Well, Father Ludwig Ott takes this position. He says Honorius was wrongly condemned by the Third Council of Constantinople. That book has an imprimatur. It has a preface by Bishop Athanasius Schneider. And, I think it is permissible, provided we understand the council was looking at the effect of what Honorius said. It helped lead to the error and spread the error, because his words were taken in that meaning. So I would say that we have to say, on matters of faith and morals, councils are protected from error.